Один, два, три, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130. 130. Ага.
Дамы и господа, маленькое объявление. Кто-то планшет забыл в столовой. Его оставил на информационном стенде.
Доброе утро.
Good morning everybody. So we are beginning our last day of our seminar, and I would put it this way. So we have left for the last day some metaphysical authors. So then the intellectual summing up of our work, and I think you all know, especially all guests from the regions, know very well Boris Vladimirovich Dubin. Many of you know him as a sociologist, and he is one of the dainty, exquisite interpreters and literature professionals studying literature, and he's a man of many talents, and anything new coming in the world of literature and related to his name, and so I recommend that you immediately read what he has to say and watch his artistic endeavor very closely. And I think that books, literature, poetry, and so this is his realm, and to better understand and explain, because let him explain, but to try to understand, so the inner world of modernity, and the inner world of today's world, because when the language of emotions so then moves over to the rational language, so the soul is relieved. Okay, thank you for the wonderful words. After those words, as to get down to business will be more challenging. So good morning, as my colleagues and myself, I will be talking about the condition of public conscience and the public mentality and Russian mentality. And I'll try not so much to describe as to try to understand what we have. It will be kind of not only comments and about the public opinion, public feelings, public conscience, but it will be kind of a textbook, grammar textbook, so ABC, and so we'll try to certainly to critically analyze the semantics of those comments, of those pronouncements, of those verbal forms that exist in the modern society, what they mean. So then I decided to make it the main subject of my presentation. So I didn't want just to repeat what I was saying earlier, what my colleagues were doing. So then the specifics, the exclusive seclusion of in the Russian public opinion. So philosophically, is the question between the general and the specific. So a relationship between these two. As if you use the philosophical language, but sociology of culture, sociology of knowledge, and I will try about this specifics, about this unique specifics from the following viewpoint. And because the words about the specific Russian way and Russian way, so the two words Russian So they're irreplaceable about this specific Russian man and specific Russian character, nature, specific, etc. And in the two last centuries, so they have been telling this to us, and it's part of our nature now. But so I will just try to look for these specifics, analyzing these specifics, this uniqueness. Not only I'm not going just to dig in the past, but I'm going just to refer myself to the present, and to try to because to always look something in the past. So we have this certain attitude. We have this specifics. And so because usually when people close their eyes to the present, and then they look in the past. So if they are afraid, so because kind of when they look into the history, so they forget what's happening around them. So they kind of screening themselves from the present. So they bury their heads in the sand, and so this is the double nature. Yes, into so something what we had before, or something that should have been all the time, but it's not here, and this nostalgia, so this introspective ruminations and broodings about the how good, how noble the past was, and then I want to stress the fact that certain elements of this specifics exist, and it's not only just a simulacre, and so which determine the sides of our lives, and it's not just a separate plan of collective existence, because when the Russians speak to each other and act on the basis of understanding that they are somehow unique, that they are exceptional and unique. This is the reality and the vision. So what was happening during the religious rift, or during the Oprichnina, we don't know. For example, Medinsky and Aristarchov, what they were writing yesterday, what they are ready to say today, and what happens in Ukraine today. So I will talk only about things that are occurring right now, and not something that has been was happening many centuries ago. And I will collate this exceptionalism in Russian mentality against what is happening now. Couple of words about this situation. So this uniqueness of this exceptionalism. So the recent public polls. So according to the information starting from spring 2014, so that is this importance of this notion that Russia is a unique, exceptional country, and that so the Russian man, special civilization, the Russian man is exceptional man, so this adumbrations of the future Russian cultural policy, it's increasing. And so the majority of Russians, about 40%, so they respond, who participate in the polls of Levada Center. So they say that Russia at this point is an exceptional country with this, and about half think that Russia should continue moving in the same direction and looking for its uniqueness. And this is so this figure is growing, and it goes hand in hand with the growth of other indicators. So for Russia, rather rare thing, and so on exclusive, unique, something unique that goes hand in hand. There's a positive attitude to power. And there is a growth, simultaneous growth of negative and or contained negative attitude towards the West, and so not only to the United States, though there's anti-Americanism is a long-standing tradition in Russia. but to the European Union. So this negative feelings, which is a rare and very telling phenomenon. So then this idea of exceptionalism is not only supported every possible way by proponents introduced and stilled by the media, but so the rhetoric of the main media channels based on this, you are not watching, and we do watch it, so that's why we are only 3-4% of the Russians against 94% of other Russians who watch the media, and that is why. So the media works for that. And this is part of the language and the pronouncements of the main talking heads that participate in the media channels and talk to the people. So 80% of the Russian population are watching TV, and certainly, and we spoke about that earlier. And it's becoming a foundation of the state program, of the state policy in the area of culture. And then recently, so the Russian power is paying a great deal of attention, Russian authorities, great deal of attention to culture. And so this interest is manifested not only in new pronouncements, but in the distribution of money. So it's realistic, pragmatic things. So that awarding orders and medals and certain awards. And so this is manifest. So then they called people of culture, people of art, writers, actors, etc. So are encouraged in every possible way by the authorities. And then the victory of Russia in sports events. So that's a big. So they made a big business of showing it, and that becomes a symbol that Russia is exceptional. Russia rules. Russia wins, and that certainly this flywheel of uniqueness of Russia starts to turn faster and faster. Then what's in net balance? On net balance, if we look at it, so the people who have this opinion, so want to pick their brains and say, what's this exceptional? What's in it? If you start asking people, so you think you're exceptional, explain. If you put this through this logical sieve, then you get several answers. So the exceptionalism is a specific nature of the state. So this is a social state. That's the state who looks after the people. And a specific relationship between the power and the people. On the one hand, so the power is far away from the people, but on the other hand, so it acts like the father, strict head of the family who takes care, looks after, supports, and so without which there will be no order in this big family. And then the intermediate position of Russia between Asia and Europe, and then another point, so that the Russians is a specific type of unity of the people which is designed differently. That's because we decide things together, so then we don't like people who wants to do something only for himself or by himself. So we're not after the riches of the world, so we want to live in a big amorphous communal social environment. And so this is the exceptionalism of Russia, a unique country. And then the most important is it's the pronouncement that the Russians have one set of values and the West has different set of values, and there are no bridges. So the difference in values, that's another. That's what they have, what we have. This point we need to take it very seriously, because semantically it's empty naturally, but and Medinsky and Aristarchov and our respondents, so they won't be able just to tell us what those specific traditional values are. They won't be able to do that. But they appeal that they traditional, that they exist, and that they are Russian values and not something else. And now, then, if you process it sociologically, so we studied the semantics and the content, touched upon the form, but now what is their function? Their function is to delineate, to demarcate us and them, Russia and the rest of the world, to divide. Very important point. And the second important point, its function is that these images, these ideas, so that I spoke about, so the population and the man kind of transfers all the initiative to the power, and he is not responsible for what's happening. So he completely renders all this to someone else, to the power, because that's 75% of the Russians. So they say that their life is not theirs, and they can't do anything about that. And so 80% say that the Russians they don't want to participate in politics, and they do not want, even if they were offered to participate in the politics. So they want just to relieve themselves of all these responsibilities. And then another function, to establish what we have, and not to talk about what it might look like, and what could have happened if we had gone a different way, and so then what is here is right. So yeah, because we're talking not about the way that we're going to follow, but it's the Russian way that we are following along. And so the word Russian is specific. It makes the sense, it establishes the uniqueness, the exceptionalism of all those who are who agree to this statement, who hold to this statement. So in this meaning, so when we give over the initiative to the power, and the public opinion, and the population, and the people, and ordinary rank and file people, so they give the power kind of a rheostat, so that allows the power to adapt to any situation, and so to fine-tune it, kind of a knob, electrical, that you can always just change the power, the tension, and calibrate its attitude to the Russian people, and at the same time it acts like a small little, a limiting factor, so which will be in the hands of the power. Modernization in this specific case, so very easy to define. This is freedom, competitiveness, new forms of solidarity, not archaic, not particular, but big, civil. And in this case, it's very telling that for many, for over the years of existence of the Soviet power and the post-Soviet power, so then the authorities so wanted just to untie the initiative of the masses. So that was one. Yes, so to vent, to open, because the initiative has been given to the power. So how can you untie the initiative and open up the initiative? And then competition. The competition just didn't fly. And in the Soviet power, so besides those just who were announced, appointed, victors, winners of those Soviet competitions, like Stakhanov, who was a minor, so like the pilots who fought the enemy. And so they were appointed. And so this is to untie the initiative of the masses and social competition. So that was the main concern of the Soviet power. And then, and in this sense, this mechanism, this construct of a unique way and unique position of Russia, What this regulatory mechanism it kind of integrates, allows three collective types of existence coexist. First is authoritarian paternalistic power. So because certain ideas. The second component is the particularity of Russia, specifics of Russia, exceptionalism of Russia. So when the masses are not responsible for anything, so they devolve everything to the power. Now that's the second. So in the Soviet Russia and post-Soviet Russia. And certainly then there are some elements of modern institutions like the judiciary, market, production, manufacturing, healthcare, and thus in this construct. So these three planes they coexist and they support each other. What's important is that this reality of those modern institutions don't work without two limitations, two constraints. If there is no sanction from the authoritarian power, and if it's not properly interpreted by the indifferent masses, and that allows the power to use the resources of these modern institutions and dabble with the market economy, at the same time adapt to the new rules of the game. So thus the whole construct is up and running, and so then 80% of the population are saying that they are happy how it all works. Now I would like to so another little comment want to dedicate it to kind of a license or response or comment to this wonderful book translated into Russian, recently published in Russia. It's the criticism and substantiation of integrity or fairness. So certainly it will be published in different languages. So I think that this is one of the most prominent books that has been recently published in Russia in the area of sociology, philosophy, sociology of power, etc., social order. Why? Because the Balkan. These two authors, they amalgamated, they put together, merged together, or they're trying just to offer some solutions to the challenges of the basic sociological problems. As described by the fathers of sociology. So one problem is the different rationality issues, facets of rationality, and then it's as Parsons or Gobb's problem of the possibility, a chance of establishing social order, and de Graham problems of societal, social as a moral instance, which actually sanctifies the existing social order. And so that's very, very interesting comment. And to a certain extent, it can be addressed. It's not only just setting an issue, but it offers some ways to how to find a solution to this issue. So let me quickly delineate what these two persons are suggesting, and then I will review it and I will comment on it. So it works out that they have it this way, but in Russia we have it in a different way. So then another title of this book is kind of sociology of grad. I don't know what grade is. Now that's a certain type of unity within which so people come out with comments concerning the environment that they are living in. So that's a social framework of cooperation between different strata of social components, social institutions, and the system of institutions. So Laransky, Balkansky, and Tavno, so he isolates several systems, several several blocks. So again, okay, patriarchal component. So where the position of a person is in a traditional hierarchy. So this is the determining factor. Who is he? Father, son, man, woman. So there's hierarchy. So this is a patriarchal capsule, or another capsule of wonder and inspiration. So this has to do with artistic endeavor. It's not non-targeted, uncertain. So this is happiness, friendship, ability to be a victim, to give oneself, to sacrifice oneself. That's another one.
Civic grad or civic construct, that the notion of the common virtue and the idea of supporting that. Marketing construct, framework, scientific and technological construct. The main idea is to efficiency, cost reduction, and no, it's not if it is adequate or efficient. I mean, the system of references, but what is important is that to see those values that back it, and those values shape the differentiation between various systems and social action. And differentiation and complexity is not just one-time characteristics. Those are the continuous faculties of the system. You cannot differentiate the society in such a way so that it would stay like that forever. It keeps on being differentiated and getting more and more complex, and that process requires effort to integrate the society, and it gives rise to the problems of common virtue, common interests, common language, and finally then lead us to the issues of a society. It's not just because people live together. It arises from the fact that people live differently, and under the circumstances, the language of differentiation is required. So the combination of the two languages, the language of differentiation, the language of uniformity, is the main idea of the book, and that's the instrument with the help of which they describe all those very difficult notions, although they refer to data, to statistics too. So both authors, individually and together, they dealt with sociology of everyday life, so sociology of the society, empirical problems of sociology, but they focus in their books on the issues of justification. That's how they refer to that. And they are preoccupied with the idea how, for what purpose, and without result, people justify their actions and the actions of others. Again, I'm not going to go in depth, but what is important for us is to see what is behind those empirical assessments and theoretical generalizations. And as I said, that's the notion of the complex, differentiated society, the society of differences. And it's also supported by the idea of the availability of some special platforms where problems and issues of an individual and the entirety can be discussed. So that it's the platforms where we can start working on the idea how to unite, to combine those two components. And third assumption, it's about already developed and a system, and the system that is continued to be improved on the assessment of individual things, common things, and something that unite people. If you wish, it's a universal system of measures and criteria, and I would refer to that as culture. Culture is something that is the generalized system of ideas, of senses, which leverages differences between people, various groups, societies. So culture is something that acts like a universal device. Again, I'm not going in depth of the etymology and semantics of the cultural notion of culture, but it's about the cultivation of people's nature. And Cicerone, that ancient Greek philosopher who applied that theory to the people, not to agriculture, he spoke of the culture of spirit. And the culture of spirit was determined by philosophy. And philosophy is a means or a system of means to cultivate that spirit or soul and sustain the spirit in that particular shape. It's the culture, in a sense, in which the word culture was understood, starting from the Enlightenment age and all the way to the age of the social and cultural criticism of by Thorne and some other authors. And there is another point in the arguments of the book of the two authors, and that is the real action. That's the availability with the people who try to justify their own and other people's actions, the availability of real experience of actions, achievement through concessions, concord, discussions, debate. So that's the mandatory experience of achieving some positive common results. It's important that they are positive, that they are common, and that they are available, they are achieved. In this sense, the key notion of the book, which actually surprised me and made me write the review, is the following. So here is one of the phrases. To achieve concord and agreement about what is just and what is not, people should know about common virtue and the idea of metaphysics. It's shocking, you know. On the one hand, the idea of the common virtue, and on the other hand, idea of metaphysics. That's something that goes beyond the framework of the immediate reality. So the possibility of agreement and concord, according to the authors, only in the case when some judgments are associated with the common virtue, and on the other hand, with something that belongs to metaphysics. So, in this sense, again, I think I will stop talking about the book, but deliberations of the authors follow the lines of Kant traditions, and they follow up philosopher Kant's ideas. Ideas that are very important, but they were forgotten recently. And that's the assumption of Kant about the common sense. Common sense is translated as some conventional wisdom or something like that, but for Kant and for me it's important to stress the meaning of common. It's common sense, it's common that unites people, and common that generalizes the immediate experience. So Kant wrote in the paragraph which Hannah Aronson, it's his wonderful book, Between Past and the Present. It was also recently published in Russia. So Hannah Arendt believed paragraph 40 of Kant criticism, the presentation of Kant's political philosophy, although it speaks about aesthetics taste, our choice. But for me it's important that Arendt, commenting on Kant's considerations of common sense, she says about the potential agreement and concord with others as the necessary justification of the specific meaning of a judgment. In other words, judgment becomes meaningful only in case it is based on some potential agreement, not with some real other participants, but even with the imagined participants, those who are not present here. And that's why it's about metaphysics. Aaron writes that the presence of others is required, who you can hypothetically put yourselves in, which considerations you should also take into account. And this ability to judge, in this sense, is the specific political capability. For me, it's important that it looks like written about philosophy, common sense, but in fact, it says about the political society and the rules of its actions. It's not something that where the authorities operate, having delegated on authority to the people, but politics is something where people act with due regard to the approaches of others and bringing their considerations to this procedure of agreeing those things with others. So politics, not in the Russian sense, but in the Kant sense, it's the sphere which sets forth collective framework to the individual, particular and group. And the task of the collective or the team is just to combine the ideas of individual and the common. And the final part of my presentation will be about Russia. I would say that very briefly, very tentatively, I would say that out of those constructs which were identified as backgrounds for collective existence by Balkansky and Tivno, in Russia we live in the Orthodox world. It's not the fact that we live as our grandfather used to live, but it's something that it's the world of established status. If you are a father, you are supposed to behave as a father. If you are a boss, you are supposed to behave as a boss. If you are the president, you are supposed to behave as a president. That's the world of the fixed status. Also, in the Russian environment, there is the other world, the world of reputations, that's also relevant for Russia, since the common Russian, it's generalized Russian, takes into account that in the world there are some other systems and some other people, but for that Russian, those others make this subject of interest, in the sense that if he tried to figure out if those others are weaker or stronger, if they have something I don't have, and whether I need it. And this sense, this idea of others serves the ground for social comparison, envy, complaints. So the world of reputations and prestige of others is represented in the Russian collective mindsets as the world of the people who are others, not aliens, but others, and they are not like me, but somehow they need something, they have something I need, and I don't have that. I was really struck by some results of the polls by Levada Center. Only 2/3 of the Russians say that they are paid less than they deserve, and that they are paid less than the same people that perform same work. I don't think that statistically they could be 2/3. It's impossible. But the figure of that majority who have something more that I do, it's important that that figure exists and it works. In more stringent terms, I wouldn't say that under the Russian conditions, the way I described them, There is nothing mine or someone else's. It's not differentiated. It's not separated. Rather, there is a point. I would say that Russians, ordinary Russians, in one of the dimensions of collective existence, they exist in no one's world. And no one's means that it doesn't belong to no one, and you have a temptation either to seize that no one's, or you are concerned and you are worried that you cannot do that because you are not brave enough, courageous enough. So the moment of seizure or the pain when you think you want something but you cannot dare take it, it's along the lines of what Nietzsche or Schiller thought. It's the conscience of you're helpless. When you think they are helpless to see something that you think you deserve. And in this sense, Russian social strata, in the sense I described it in the sense of common. I'm coming to the end of my presentation, and in this sense, Russians and their collective lives. Individually, they can feel differently, but in their collective life, Russian does not take those differences. They do not accept that all people are different, or that the people are all equal. That's the slogan, that there is no peace, no war, no differences, and that's very important in order to describe, to identify the modern Russian collective mindsets. And for Russians, in this sense, it's problematic to see who I am, what I am, why I own those things and not those things. And both is a problem, and it's some cultural, not social boundaries that would make a demarcation line between mine and someone else's. And that would make me respect that demarcation line. It doesn't mean that you cannot cross that demarcation line, but at least you know that there is such a boundary. So in this sense, that's not mine, not someone else's, no difference. So ordinary Russians, they translate any differences into hierarchical ones. In the sense that it's not the difference between people in terms of talent, enthusiasm, opinions, but that's the difference in positions, because there is the world of positions that dominates. So all differences are translated into the difference in positions, higher or lower. And if equality is recognized, that this equality is a stigma. That's the equality of those, us, who were deprived of something. I think this expression belonged to Custine, who used to say that equality is in slavery. It's the equality of the poor. It's the equality of those stigmatized, the equality of those who were deprived of something. And in this sense, I would speak of the very important problem, saying that I'm talking about the positions, opinions, rhetorics, which are shaped in the conditions of a long-term systemic lack of freedom. The way Balkansky and Tivno write about that in their book. Another aspect typical for Russian conditions, it is a lack of trust, fundamental mistrust to others. I can refer to some data and saying that up to 3/4 or 2/3, not less of the people believe that you cannot trust other people. But I would further entertain that point, saying that the following. First, that's a figure that represents our alienation from others, because they are others. then it is about the depreciation on their status, meaning that those people belong something that they do not deserve. And the conviction that most likely those others wish something bad to us. And what is most important, that it will not work. So the idea that it's only others who act and let them act, they will fail anyway, it will not work with them. In some of an article, I read about the words of a Russian taxi driver in Simferopol in the Crimea. He was talking about the Crimean Tatars, and he was saying that we keep silent, and they come to a rally demanding something. And that's the phrase tells you everything. It's the main idea I've been talking to you about. We keep silent, and then they are active. But they will fail, so we are right, even if we keep silent. Mistrust, in this case, is a means to depreciate the image of others and some kind of leverage if you lose something or fail. And in this sense, it's characteristics to see that if there is some idea of others and idea of your own capabilities, they exist as a construct in a construct of a possible loss. And people think that I don't have that, but other people will not have it too because they will fail. And the last 2 points. So this kind of idea of yourself and others, ours and others, mine and others, it really leads us to the fact that all actions are paralyzed, are stalled. And my very last point, if I may revisit the book by Balkansky and Tevnor again, and one of the main ideas is the idea of justice and fairness. And for Russians, and it summarizes everything I talked about before. The demand of justice is very high. Perhaps that's the only demand that Russians have about social reality, power, and other things. But that's that demand of justice that applies to others. But for I myself is an exception, so they are to be just and fair to me. Those others are to be just and fair to me, but I have a right to act differently, and that makes the construct like the construct of the top official of the country. So, and that exception of yourself, of specificity and the exclusion of yourself from a situation, that's the idea of the blind spot. There is something I cannot see, but still I have a right for exception. I think this idea is very important, perhaps the core idea for the narration. In this sense, as I said, there is nothing that is alien, it belongs to the others, and the practice of the modern public opinion in Russia and the practice of the power's rhetoric, and even those groups who try to seize power, who lost power and feel pity about that and miss that. It's not that they try to identify their own point of opinion, but it's about the merging their opinion with the opinions of others as a resource for my justification. And there is no wonder that when modern authorities stick to the rhetorics of the human rights activists of yesterday or day before intelligentsia. Everything is taken, everything is combined and merged. It's not syntaxis, but paradoxis. That's the combination, the merger, without the reference to the transition rules. Syntaxis says about the rules for merging various parts of the sentences, but paraxis that connects the various elements of the sentence with and. That's the language of the public opinion. That's the language of mass media. And that's the reason the language lacks generalized figures and maximally universal language, values, guidelines. Everything depends on the specific situation, on practical policy, on today's geopolitical interests, and the idea by Balkansky and Tebno, grammar and justification of their opinions and recognition of relative justice on the part of others are not there, and I think you know the list. You know the words when there are mutual complaints, and there are very special words, and that is something that sees no partnership. And art always is ahead of sociology. And journalist Ilya Falayeva wrote about her poem about Russia. He wrote a very key phrase that you have no partner in Russia. Thank you. Thank you very much, Boris. I'm really not certain who can qualify for such a discussion. You really have suppressed all your participants, and so you're really you acted like an ordinary Russian citizen. So you made everybody be humiliated. But every time when you look at Boris, you think it's he's our breakthrough, but in reality, okay, thank you.
Well, let me pass on to the questions and answers session. It is of interest that the Polish diaspora here at the seminar has been quite agitated by Mr. Dubin's presentation. Margarita Pszowa from Poland. Let me first make a remark and then ask a question. It seems to me that in the political discourse in Russia today, the figure or the image of an enemy takes a central place, which acts as a foundation for the political ratings of the politicians, and then it is channeled down to the lives of the common people. For 15 minutes that I spent at the railroad station, I heard at least 3 times that I am in the zone of elevated risk. At the little shop where I went to, grocery store that I went to buy something to run some errands, there was a sign on the wall to the extent that we should be aware of the pickpockets. Do you believe that there is a chance to change this negative picture, or at least to allay by replacing this image of enemy with that of an opponent, at least? Well, I hope you have not tried to send a parcel through a conductor at the train. No. Well, let me repeat. There are two levels to which we appeal to dislodge this burden from ourselves. So, not to raise the question if we can be others, if we can become different. There are two levels for dislodging the psychological burden. One is the question of the enemy, or else it is the question of the past. What is important is that both these levels dislodge this responsibility from your shoulders. In this sense, in this connection, the sense of danger is specifically difficult and specifically important, because the sense of danger is an inalienable part of the lives of Russians today. And without going deeper, let me into these details. Let me remind you of the extraordinary and the role of the extraordinary in the Russian history, which indeed runs deep into the Soviet history. Is there a way to break this circle? I have indeed come up with a very narcissistic viewpoint, and at some point we have to say that a narcissist will have to say that there are others in the world, and not all of them can be described in the category of an enemy or in the categories of the things past, or the national traitors and so on and so forth. Sooner or later this will have to be acknowledged, and that will depend not only on the efforts of the Russians themselves, but also on the efforts of the other side, as they say. So what needs to be done is for the Russians to be able to sit and understand that there are other nations, groups and peoples in the world. Unless this is recognized, this will come up with more problems than today's narcissistic approach. And what we see today, as we have seen in the past times, recently, what does narcissism lead to when it becomes the leading trend in the military and civil life? There's always a chance. The chance is definitely is contingent on both sides, and in Russia this chance is unfortunately not being used at the moment. Shweta Jacques from Poland. Thank you very much. I have a question. The Soviet Union was a system, a special system, a unique system, a special mission. However, in this special mission, there was a system of extra-systemic literature, or extra-systemic literature, or writers' culture. Czeslaw Milosz once said, by oversimplifying this phrase, is that the worse it is for the culture, the better for the literature. The rest is in the parentheses, of course. He was talking about the socialist bloc in Europe. The worse, the better. Do you believe that the common sense that was taken down the generations by the writers and the cultural figures, as in the very special intelligentsia, there's also some is there what is, if there is a special mission of the intelligentsia in Russia today to take down this mission? Well, I'm very wary of the idea of being special or extraordinary, because I know how much this idea has been abused. With respect to the cultural figures and public figures, and their ability to influence. I think there are several dangers here, several factors of risk. One is the reversion to going down to the underground. And this is a clear factor of danger. I'm against being underground. It is not because I hate. I seem to have lived a life of a spy, but I don't like this situation. I prefer the situation of the end of the 1980s or the beginning of the 1990s, when freedom is given a chance, and immediately the figure of the others immediately come up, the partners that you're connected to, and that you're not insulted by them being different, and that indeed shows your interest. It is interesting to be together because you're different. So the first danger is the danger of isolation. The second, and this is already happening, we're seeing this, and the government is using this, and part of the cultural figures are already sinking underground. The second thing is the use of our words. We have been bereft of words because the government has stolen our slogans, or has stolen our creeds, or has stolen our words. But it is not just about stealing the words or robbing us of our words, but how bad the people take this. Well, if you're men of culture, you're creative people, there's no problem. If you've been robbed of words, you can come up with new words. It's no problem. Think up new things, invent, fancy, imagine. And the third point to be made, or the third danger or factor of risk, is that the people of culture take into account the interests of the government. There is a danger not to take those into account, and it is a danger to take them into the account. So life is dangerous after all. So in a way, you have to take both options and try to find your position, to cultivate your own line of thought between the Scilus and Charybdis, without giving yourself up to either, and by remembering what is the sense and what is the possible resource of your existence, even though this is a very tormenting path. It is difficult to abolish this, and I think otherwise we will just cease to be men of culture or people of culture. So the chance is there, but there's also a very toilsome road to go. Nina. Nina Kolpova from the Republic of Komi. Thank you for your lecture. My question is about the experience of authoritarianism. Even 5 years ago, it was very difficult to imagine that the repertories of theatres could become a subject of politics. When the Bolshoi theatre staged The Children of Rosenthal, there was a certain reaction from the governmental echelon, but the Bolshoi said that they had no right to interfere. Some performances that have been recently banned, there was even a danger of the patronage. So this is indeed about authoritarianism invading the culture. So if we are taking this ideology of Russia's a special path and not Russia's not being Europe, we should then remember that history will repeat itself, and you should not move any further. You can just look at Europe, at the European countries, say Spain, where at one time there was a lot of rhetoric about the special Spanish path, that Spain is not Europe. So why, in spite of such objective factors and circumstances, why are we not prepared to learn by the lessons of the past and the lessons of the others? A very difficult and a very tough question. It's a toughie, as they say. Imagine that your son is 80 years of age and he is a poor student, and you're telling him, well, why aren't you spending time to study? And he says, I don't want it. I want something else. I don't want to go to school. Well, the ability to study by the experience of others is in a way a very limited opportunity, a very limited possibility. It is not quite reasonable to only learn by your own experience. People don't want to study. They don't want to think about studying. And this will change everybody. I think that changing people is a very difficult thing, as history teaches. It is not in every country where people who are responsible for the civic life, for culture, for order, social order, among other things, political order. It is not always that the people who are responsible for maintaining the order derive from the maxim of idealistic philosophy. You should be different if you can, as Kant said. Jorge Luis Borges, under the conditions of Argentina, which survived some terrible dictatorships and civil strife and horrors. Borges said about 1820 when, or 1810, I don't remember, when the actual the liberation for Latin America from the Spanish, from Spain started, that he said that at that time we took a decision to become others, or to become different, to become others. I would certainly draw your attention to the possibility when the people, some people in Russia who are responsible for politics, for economy, for whatever else, who will one day say, we have taken a decision to become other. This is a responsible thing. Studying, well, of course, learning by others' experience is important, but I would rather study or learn by acknowledging that you may not be the only intelligent, the strongest, the best, and indeed not the only in the world. And it is high time to think how you can become different, how you can become the other. And I think then this challenge is at the same time crossing many of our fates, and the decision to become different changes a lot in both the structure of the state and the lifestyle of the people. With the Spanish, I agree. We can learn a lot from the Spanish, from the Germans, from the Japanese, probably even from the Chinese. But I mean, the list is open. It's a very long list. The last thing I would like to say in this regard is that when we just started our empirical study at the all-union study for the social research, we thought that this was a very good thing to compare to other countries. That one could think that if we should move the road along the road of China or the low road of Sweden, or to get back to some other times in the Russian history. So there was a time when people were trying to compare. There came a time when people might have stopped by comparing or even thinking about the costs to be paid. Dmitry from Tomsk region. Dmitry Volsov. The idea of freedom. Do you believe that this is a more an endogenic or exogenic factors? Is this the unwillingness of the society to assume the initiative, or the desire of the state to monopolize this initiative? Or else this is the idea of the unique nature of Russia is the response to the West's unwillingness to take Russia as an equal partner. You have said that the sociological studies have shown that this idea is getting greater prevalence in the society. Well, I think that we have to deal with 1, 2, 3 and even more. It is probably difficult to range these priorities, and I can do it one way and you will do it another way. But what I will say is that with all this mental alienation of our respondents from the authority, from the government, I would say that we have to deal with some established social and political order. And these are mainly people who think, act not like automatons, but as people alive. But of course, a flight from freedom is not just a Russian tradition. I think that this is a phase in the existence of contemporary societies related to the entry of these societies into the modern state. Russia wants to stand in these modern times, but this is of course connected to a whole host of questions. But there are the interests of the society, the interests of the people that start to converge. Because there is this movement towards one and towards the other, we're always entering this modernity and feeling these shocks of the modernity, because the flight from this is what we have been going through and many other societies have gone through. Germany, France, India, Italy, and so on and so forth. Probably less America than others, and then maybe Britain, but this is more of a subject for the historians of politicians. Generally speaking, I think that the flight from freedom is such a phenomenon for specialized paths. What is taking root in Russia is specifically important. I think I have written somewhere that history in Russia is only felt as a repetition, not as an ability or an opportunity for an alternative path, as a plethora of opportunity, but only as a repetition. And we will not do what others are trying to do. And that's why Crimea will be ours. We're doing it in the other way. our friend from Kaliningrad, our Western colleague. Ivan Vlasov from Kaliningrad. Thank you, Boris Dubin, for your presentation. Sometimes we sing with our colleagues, and Galitsy's song sounded here, I Choose Freedom, where Alexander Golitsy sings that I am choosing freedom, and freedom opens the door, there is this idea of the victim in the Russian collective unconscious, and there is also the idea of this unique path of Russia. Is there another view, and how do such items come together? Oh, it's a question to probably God the Almighty. If you think about other ideas and the ideas of exceptionalism, I would have thought that there are some ideas which have been relevant in Russia from the very first poets, coming down and up the time and through to Golitsy and the Kujava. This is the idea of a man among people. The fact that the Russian literature is a special subject, a very interesting subject indeed, the fact that the Russian literature, as distinct from many statements that literature did not follow the path of Alexander Pushkin, but followed a very different path, or even several paths, this is a very important moment of historical concession, and as it comes from the great short story of Edgar Allan Poe, when the actual 20%, 20 centimeters get into 20 meters, and you can no longer dig up the treasure in that same way. So the question about the concepts of Alexander Pushkin and the fact that the Russian literature followed a different discursive path is becoming more and more convoluted. Is it true that the path of Gogol and the path of Dostoevsky were the only paths for the Russian literature and the Russian culture, or there was also the Pushkin's path, and how different it was from the path of Gogol and the path of Dostoevsky? It may be that there may be some other ways to consider this subject if you think about what has already been achieved in the culture. There is this state where some people reflect in different cultures. It may be that this is a stage of existence for a man among others, or maybe these may be different models of development, reverting to that topic of the Russian literature and what course it might have taken. Question from the Altai region. Denis Grekov from Altai region. You have just said that you've used the word a repetition. And I indeed have agreed that many of the things that you've described have this feeling of déjà vu, of something already seen, because we remember how in the history of the Russian culture how it was easier to proclaim the Russian philosopher Chadaev insane rather than to allow for the insanity of the Russian life, the life of the Russian society. So the frustrations may focus and come and converge, because the modernity is also one of these options and alternatives. And I think that there is a certain distortion of the perception of time, and the distortion of perceiving ourselves within time. But so far I have not been able to describe it. I would have liked to try it, but could you evolve on that topic? You're right. Indeed, we're registering, if we register it right, some problems of an ego. And they can definitely and will definitely influence the a priori forms of perception in time and space. Well, we've spoken about space already. Crimea is ours, but that's not what I meant, and I think that that's not the end point anyway. But if we speak about time, then if you speak about some meaningful models in the public sphere, then only two models operate. One is the model which is most often used by the government in its actions, in the sense that there's no time, that time is running up. Lately, one of the bureaucrats, one of the officials, when talking about the publication of the Russian encyclopedia, he said, we will be printing as many as there are in demand. This is... he just switched off the time. So the fact that people might need Russian encyclopedia tomorrow or the day after or in 200 years, that means that the time has been switched off. So the time are the others. We actually have the idea of time. We perceive it when we see different planes of existence. There has to be the idea of diversity for this idea to be clicked in. So for 300 years your novel will not be published. So the bureaucrat candidly believes that he will be sitting at the same desk in 300 years and banning this novel from being published. The other model is the model of repetition, which you've already mentioned, something that is used in the rhetoric, justification. A reference to precedent, a reference to the eternal Russian values, the reference to this unique Russian path, and indeed today's public Russian space oscillates between these two concepts of time. The time is gone, the time is dead, something already expressed by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and the time of repetition being another note or another tempo in the Russian culture as defined by other artists. like Osip Mandelstam, and these are the true treasure troves of time. So it is important for such is my incomplete answer to your very, very large question. But the important thing is that such mechanisms are then transposed to other generations, taken and root in the educational system, and a history is either becoming a circle, or else the time is managed by the officials. It can be switched on or switched off arbitrarily. I have to excuse and indeed take an apology before those who haven't been able to ask the question, but let us thank and as a consolation, let me say that Mr. Dubin's presentation is, as always, brilliant. This is how we should start our day. And well, thank you very much. Thank you. Every morning with Boris Dubin. Oh, that's quite a treat. Come and stay for a week. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thanks a lot, and I always thank the founders and those who make this school happen, and thank you for being here with